there. Mandy Friedman here, licensed professional clinical counselor, clinically certified domestic violence counselor, clinically certified trauma professional level 2, and the creator of SNAP, Survivors of Narcissistic and Abusive Personalities. We're back talking about Succession, episode 9. This is part 2. The episode's called Church and State. Part 1 was about the church aspects. Today we're going to talk about state. And I'm with my brother Andrew. What do we mean about church and state? Why are we calling this second half state?
Well, Mandy, in the first part of our episode 9 kind of coverage here, we talked about the funeral and the emotional aspects and the things we learned about Logan and the things that didn't really have much to do with the main storyline of the company and who's gonna succeed Logan and all that stuff. That was kind of a different part. That's the state part that we'll talk about today. What moves were made before and after the funeral? How did the children's handling of the funeral affect the business side of things? Because it did quite a bit. What we end up having is we have Shiv kind of setting some things up and succeeding a little bit. Roman fucks everything up. It goes terribly for him. And Kendall kind of tries to pick up the pieces. That's what we have going on here. Shiv wants Matsson to release his numbers during the turmoil so no one notices.
She's trying to use the funeral as a cover, that all the attention's going to be on what's happening with the funeral, and that maybe by him releasing the numbers, they can kind of sweep some things under the rug. She's also pitching herself as CEO, and he gestures, you're pregnant. And she's like, that's not going to be a problem. I'm going to schedule it and I'll be back the next day. We're going to outsource this.
She assures him where her priorities lie, and they don't lie with an unborn child. That's for sure. Shiv walks up to the sharks who are all gathered. We have Jerry, we have Frank, we have Carl, and they're all hanging out. And she asks them, how bad was my dad really? And they lie.
They say, oh, he was a salty old dog. He was a tough one. They really just say very generic things. And, she wants the truth. I think really what's going on with Shiv right now is by asking this question, how bad was he? I feel like she's gearing up for what she's going to do next. And as the rest of the season plays out, Shiv plays a major role in stepping up to try to do the right thing. I think she's recognizing that she is alone in her position, that her brothers are not going to be working with her. They're not going to include her in their plans, and she has to make unilateral moves. That's why she's been working closely with Lucas Matsson. She's trying to secure her role in some way, shape, or form. She knows she's pregnant now, and that could be a factor in some ways. But if she could have more facts about how bad it really was, that might motivate her more and help her decide which direction she's going to go. Because I feel like she is trying to factor in, of course, her own selfish motives and what she wants for her. But I think she might be the only one in the room who actually cares about what's right and wrong.
Well, Ewan's there, and he tries.
Well, you make a great point there. She's trying, and no one else is.
There is a big mausoleum where Logan is transported after the actual church part of the funeral, and it is absurd. It's like something that Cyrus the Great was buried in, or something like that. Don't begrudge me my tomb. Kind of carved on the outside and all that. And this is where some of this stuff happens. Also, there is a funeral reception afterwards, and it seems to be, I'm not sure where it's at. It's a swanky location. Finally, Tom arrives at the reception, and he can't stay, though. Initially, Shiv is very mean to Tom. They've been in this adversarial kind of way, but as this conversation goes on, she kind of melts and they kind of come to terms with each other a little bit. She drinks, at first, she drinks champagne just to be a bitch, and it's really messed up, but this is all interrupted by Mom, who stops by for some banter.
And Mom is trying to cast doubt on Shiv's abilities, She was already, we mentioned in the previous episode, part 1, where, they had that nonverbal interaction. Well, mom's swooping in to finish that interaction out, with some words this time. But she's casting doubt. I guess maybe it's circulating that Shiv is making a move. I mean, they can't do anything without everyone knowing. She's wondering how Shiv is going to be able to do anything and be a mom at the same time. And Shiv says that she's going to just outsource it and do it the family way. She'll schedule it, she'll outsource it. And she says that doesn't leave any emotional damage, does it? I love the sarcasm and how she's trying to call her mom out for being a shitty mom, just saying, oh, it's just the family way to outsource the parenting part. Like, I don't need to see the kid. Mm-hmm. And it'll all be fine, right, Mom?
It's amazing because this is kind of, what begins the melting of this, ice between Shiv and Tom, because he is shocked by the conversation they had because he's exhausted. Remember, he was doing cocaine to stay awake, and that was not long ago, and so now we have him here. He's trying to make it to the funeral after being at the news station all this time. He is finally breaking down a little bit, and he's shocked, and he says, your mom, wow, just like that. And then he reveals how exhausted he is, and he starts to talk. When we're exhausted, we can get emotional very easily. Don't think about things that make you sad when you're exhausted, because you just start crying. And he starts thinking about when Logan died, and he lets her know that he got to say goodbye. Like as if I didn't need to go to the funeral. I already had closure. I was right there in the room, but it's in a genuine way. She's sympathetic.
Yeah. I mean, Tom's been through a lot. And like we've said before, he's probably got the most emotional intelligence of anyone there. He probably received genuine love from his parents, whereas Shiv really did not. And maybe he felt a fatherly connection in some way to Logan. And Logan did have a special connection with Tom. It's true. I mean, he let Tom have intimate access to him in ways that he didn't for any of his actual children. And he is exhausted, and he hasn't had a chance to pre-grieve the way others have. And now here's the funeral. He didn't get to go because he had to work. But, he points out that I was there. And I think he's kind of saying it to himself in a way that he was sad to not be at the funeral. He wanted to be at the funeral for strategic reasons. But I think, too, he had an emotional attachment and would have liked to have been there. And when he's saying, but I was there, I had a chance to say goodbye, I think he's saying that to himself to help him with the emotions he's having in that moment, which is sadness and grief. We talk about psychopaths and narcissists and how they lack empathy, but all personalities exist on a spectrum. There is some capacity for love. There is some capacity for sadness. It's just usually skin deep and fleeting. They can love their children with their version of love. Not all of them lack it completely. There's a quote by Henry Miller I like to use to describe this feature of abusive personalities, psychopaths, and narcissists. And that is, at the bottom of every frozen heart, there is a drop or two of love, just enough to feed the birds. There's something in there, but it isn't enough. It's certainly not enough to nurture a child, to raise a family, to sustain meaningful relationships. It's not enough to have somebody make good choices that is helpful to society and care about others. But they're not completely 100% without it. It's not enough, and it's usually skin deep and fleeting, and they can get over things really quickly. They also laugh about their own abuse. You've seen this with these kids. They make jokes about the abuse that took place that are actually pretty horrific. So when you see Tom, who is probably on the lower end of the spectrum of all of them, you see him, becoming emotional, there's still something in there that is capable of love. And I truly think that there's some love for Shiv as well.
Well, Shiv shows him some love and says, listen, just go to the apartment, which means their apartment, which they have not been living together, right? So this is an invitation to a doorway that may lead into a hallway that may lead back into her life. And it's a little bit of, sympathy for Tom in this moment. And they have a genuine moment, and that's just very rare on the show to see two characters having a genuine moment at the same time. Usually it's just one of them, so.
Well, don't forget that Shiv is feeling really alone. She is surrounded by evil, and she does not believe that she's evil. And Tom is someone that she does actually know. He's someone that does continue to seem to want to show her love. So it's like she's being reminded of that in this moment, that, wait a second, maybe Tom is in my corner. He really did love my dad. I mean, look at him.
Let's go back a little bit and talk about Roman. So Roman is thinking business at the funeral before, the coffin arrives, and that's when he loses it. And he's trying to round up a posse. And his number one buckaroo is Frank, and he tries to recruit Frank, who just pretty much is like, nah, dude.
Remember at the beginning of the episode, Roman is puffed up and confident and thinks he's going to win the funeral. And he's walking around that way at first, and he's trying to sort of gauge where he stands with people. And at this time, he's not really getting a lot of people biting. I mean, he's not getting any respect. Now that Logan is gone, he doesn't even have the protection of his dad, really. People would be more respectful of him or put up with him more when Logan was around.
Yes.
Now, without Logan around, they're like, I don't have to deal with you at all, motherfucker. They're not giving him any. And he tries with Jerry. She shuts him down. But yeah, he's getting shut down, and just kind of is like, oh, okay. And he just like walks away.
It's interesting because the contrast between him and Kendall in this episode is they kind of have parallel storylines, where when Kendall tries to recruit people like Hugo, for example, he just lays it out just like his dad would. He's like, listen, I'm going to try to take over the world, and you're going to be my lapdog. But, the crumbs are going to be millions. What do you think? And Hugo's like, woof. He respects Kendall in this moment because Kendall didn't fuck up the funeral. Where Roman messes up, Kendall does well in this episode. He's going to leak some narrative that's going to discredit Madsen, right? But then also he recruits Logan's driver.
Kendall approaches Colin and weaponizes some information and says, so I hear you've been talking to a head shrinker. And Colin seems really surprised that Kendall would know that. And, he says, I thought that was private. And Kendall kind of smirks and laughs and is like, well, it's not. And then gives him a little bit of an ultimatum now that he has leverage, which is, you can come work for me. You did good work for my dad, and you could do good work for me. But don't forget that Colin is also who has covered up things that Kendall has done. Mm-hmm. Colin knows where all the bodies are buried. And I guess Kendall's saying to him, look, I don't give a shit if you know where all the bodies are buried. I like that you know where all the bodies are buried. That's what we need. And also, I've been following you, and you should be afraid of me. So there's intimidation and control happening there. But Colin, he doesn't have a life outside of this family. And maybe that's what he's talking about in therapy, is like, what do I do now that Logan's gone? I mean, maybe he likes the idea of returning to work. It'll just be, if he does, it'll be very different for him, because he's used to seeing Kendall as a liability that he has to constantly clean up after. And moving from that to Kendall being his boss, I mean, I don't know. It seems like that's a recipe for disaster. But they all seem like they want to stay within the system. And this is very common when you belong to a family system like this, or you are adjacent to them. You become, in some ways, like addicted to the situation and the dynamic, because it simultaneously neglects you but fuels you. Did I do good today, Daddy? Does he like me today? And is he going to take me to Denny's? And is Logan going to sit with me one-on-one today? It's hard to break away from those, high highs that you get when you're around people like that. And Colin would not have had any kind of identity. Remember when he did meet with Logan, he never said anything. And Logan would go on and on and on, and he maybe would ask Colin one little question, and then Colin would halfway answer it, and then Logan would keep talking. So who is Colin anyway? And does Colin even know who he is outside of this family?
He's gathering all his forces, and everybody's saying yes to Kendall. And I really think it's because of what happened at the funeral. That's the thing, is that he really got everybody on board, and Shiv did a good job too. So there's this awesome scene where Mencken's holding court. He shows up at the funeral reception, and we get a conversation between him and several people, but it's the blocking and kind of the way they film this and the performance that makes it awesome. Is that he's standing there with Kendall as the cameras walk up, right? Kendall gets interrupted by Roman. Then Greg walks up and interrupts Roman. Then Connor interrupts Greg. And then Shiv and Mattson walk up and interrupt Greg, all during this whole thing, right? And it's amazing.
It's cringy to watch. It's hard to watch this scene because it's like a feeding frenzy.
Yeah.
And they're awkwardly all like jockeying for position, and Mencken is like in the power seat, like he knows that he doesn't really need them now, you can tell, and he's not going to let them hold it over him that they were instrumental in getting him elected, or at least having the election declared for him. They just stumble over each other, and it's kind of gross and cringy to watch, especially Roman and Greg. It's like, ugh.
Greg is trying to like show off and act like that him and Tom did something great. And, when Roman shows up, he acts very childish, to Greg. And then Roman is immediately made fun of by Mencken for crying. And it's this little just one moment is awesome because Kendall's right there too. And Kendall goes, "Hey, hang on, not today." Like that to Mencken. It was interesting. It's almost like he's goes into his mode where he defends Roman from Logan, right? It kind of happens real quick there.
That's a good point. It's interesting how Kendall, as the older brother, will step in to defend. But here in a little while, we see that he's also really happy to weaponize the situation as well, if it's going to get him what he wants, and using some of his dad's manipulative skills on Roman.
Well, Shiv and Mattson have a successful pitch, and their idea is that they're going to have a USA CEO. It's going to be Shiv. Mencken is very receptive to it. He really likes it. Now, Mattson is a nervous wreck here, but Mencken likes that because he sees how powerful he is, right? He is experiencing this power for some of the first times here on these very powerful, rich people. He feels like a big shot, but him and Mattson are also very similar in a lot of ways.
Mattson does get nervous here, and the only other times we've seen him nervous is when he has to talk to women. Other than that, he's usually calm, collected, and chill, but man, he really is nervous. And he's kind of fumbling over his words. But you're right, Mencken is just lapping it up. He really is enjoying this. And I think, too, Mattson is being somewhat self-deprecating and recognizing I'm the foreigner. Mm-hmm. And I'm willing to, I get what your position is, basically, that Mencken is anti-foreigners and that he would fall into that category. So, he really is doing this self-deprecating, submissive move of being like, I know that you are the most powerful person here. I would not have expected that from Mattson. Mattson, even with Logan, he didn't wriggle, but he's wriggling around Mencken. And it makes you wonder, why is it that he is so nervous right now? Probably because he has things to hide and he's actively working to subvert the system. In the meantime, he has Shiv, who's doing a really good job propping him up and trying to get this deal to go through so that she can have a piece of the pie.
Shiv has no credibility, in my opinion, for anything she does because of what happens here. Because she basically says, "Oh, you're worried about my political beliefs, working with you, Mencken." And she's like, "That's okay. My dad was fluid. I'm fluid," basically, is what she says, which is, that's not good.
But I don't think she means that.
Well, she'll say whatever she's going to say to get what she wants. It is what it is, I guess. Now, we do have another amazing scene here towards the end. I mean, there's just two more really to talk about. Kendall walks up to Roman, who's kind of on the sidelines after being humiliated. He just is a complete asshole. And he says, hey, we were doing okay with this whole thing, but then you fucked it all up. And, but that's okay, bro. I got this. I'm going to take care of it. And he does that while Roman is begging him to stop. Mandy, is there a thing where like sometimes narcissists are like, you can't abuse this person because that's my person to abuse? Is there something like that?
Oh, absolutely. It's property. You can't hurt my brother. I will be the one to hurt my brother. And two, it serves another purpose, which is it makes Kendall look like he's a good brother. It makes him look like that he is a good person, or, that he would do the right thing. And it is true. We have seen Kendall stand up for some of the other family members when Logan was being too harsh. And, remember Logan smacks the grandkid, at dinner. And so there's something in Kendall, like I said before, it's a spectrum. There's something in Kendall that wants to defend someone who's being abused, but then he can't differentiate because he also has a personality disorder and lacks that self-awareness. So he's going to be doing something audaciously hypocritical. And right on the heels of Ewan's speech, which disclosed a form of abuse that went on with Logan, where he was told that, or he was led to believe, and they allowed that belief to be sustained within Logan, that it was his fault that his sister Rose died. And he walked around with this feeling of guilt that he had caused this, even though that may not have been the case. And a good, loving parent would never want their child to walk around thinking that. Now, here we have Kendall talking to Roman saying, this is all your fault. And maybe there's some truth to it, but what he really wants to do is he wants to get Roman to be subservient and compliant and follow his plan, because he knows he's going to need the numbers. They know at this point that Shiv is making other moves, and he's trying to make sure that they box Shiv out. So he's going to say whatever he needs to say to Roman to get him on board, including something that is psychologically abusive. And you're right, he's begging him to stop, but he's like, he just keeps going, and then plays the martyr of like, it's okay, I'll take care of it, like I'll clean up the mess, but you really shit the bed here, and that really hurt us. And so not only was Roman humiliated, traumatized by the funeral, but now, we're in the state part of things. It has now leaked over into what they're trying to accomplish in their business moves. And so Roman is at a real low right now.
He gets up to leave. And as he's leaving, we see the Sharks, Jerry, Carl, and Frank sitting at the table. And they are looking at a video or listening to something online. And it is the sounds of Roman crying at the funeral that someone's recorded. And now it's like a meme, right? Roman doesn't see that or hear that, but we see that to illustrate that, yes, he is at his low. He is been humiliated. What does Roman do? How does he react to this?
He walks out into the street where there are demonstrations that are anti-Mencken demonstrators, and he starts taunting them, even crosses over the barricade and is now walking around with them, and he's confronting them, and he wants to have them react and hurt him. He's actually seeking pain. He wants someone to punish him. And when somebody has, been abused the way that he's been abused, don't forget the dog cage type thing, and which we talked about last time. That could even tie into why it was so traumatic for him to picture his dad in the casket. Because he was kept in a cage. He might have some claustrophobic tendencies. He also is going to have that sort of masochistic element to his personality where he seeks pain, because that's feeling something, and it does give some kind of a release of endorphins. And so people that seek pain in that masochistic way often do come from abusive homes. Remember how they would wait outside of his office and make noise so that he would come out and growl at them. Even negative attention is some attention.
Yeah.
So even getting getting screamed at or abused, or, you know, you get thrown into a cage, at least they got some attention for one moment. And then that becomes something that gets hardwired within a person, that pain actually can bring them some relief. So to me, when he goes out in the crowd and he's taunting them and you know, really wanting to get his ass kicked, that's his way of trying to feel better. He might also believe, I deserve this. I did fuck up. I am a piece of shit. I am a weakling. I deserve to be beat. I deserve to be punished. That's what would happen in his family is you're weak, you get punished. And so since his dad isn't around to do it, he walks out into the crowd and the crowd becomes Logan.
Yeah, it's awesome. This show is freaking awesome. And that's just a great example of why when we talk about these episodes, it's so fun, because we could talk about this forever. But Mandy, there's only one episode left. It's the big one. It's the one where we finally see who succeeds on Succession.
Thank you for watching or listening. Bye.